Hello and welcome to episode 9 of The Dive. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see us now.
Oh, no.
If you're listening
Dang
to
it.
us
Spooky.
on SoundCloud, iTunes, or any of the podcast platforms we're on, it's going to be exactly the same. It's our first post-MSI episode. How you doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be on YouTube now.
They
It's
keep
only
picturing
different.
us in their heads.
We did just move into this area, though, so this is very new. We're going to add some extra stuff.
Yeah, have some upgrades in the
Yep.
coming weeks, and hopefully we'll keep improving it.
Audio-only listeners, I'm Jat, Kobe, and Azael. What are you talking about today?
Well, we're definitely going to hit on the new meta that came with all the preseason changes, because that's just now hitting pro play. And then we're also going to talk about, rankings, right?
Yeah, we want to do our power rankings for the NA LCS summer split, obviously starting this Friday. So we're going to break down where we think teams are going to end up.
Yeah, first off, mid-season changes. It was pitched as the tank update, right? They added 2 tank items. They reclassified some tank items like Banshee's Veil, Abyssal Scepter. They made like Gargoyle's Stone Plate and Adaptive Helm.
And
Let me talk
tell
about
you.
the tanks first.
Let
me tell you.
First thing, I was very, very angry that they even selected Zach to begin with. And I was like, this is going to be bad. This is going to be terrible. Because he was already, I thought, in a pretty good place.
Yeah.
The changes that they made to him, I all concede were interesting, right? You're adding more utility to this champion. But I do think they bungled it a little bit. He came out super weak because they took a bunch of damage off. Then they put a bunch of damage back in. Now he's super strong. He went from the lowest win rate to the highest win rate after the attempted balance changes for the guy. And he was in a very good place.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that the whole rework did make him more interesting. And once they fine-tune it, I think it'll be a good rework, but definitely a work in progress.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, people are really enjoying both the Q and I think the Ultimate. I see so many people tweeting about how fun it is to
It's definitely memey.
use the abilities and stuff. It kind of seems like it does fit like the personality of the character and stuff, which is cool. But I agree, like it's not the best when it comes out super weak and then it's super overpowered.
Yeah.
To me, it wasn't even the damage. It's like you took the knockup and you doubled how long the E knockup lasts. So it went from being impossible to hit your ult to being impossible to avoid the ult. And and now he's just at this point where he's so strong, and it'll be interesting.
Point where he's permanent.
Yeah, I think the tuning is pretty clearly off on him, but if you separate the raw power of the champion with kind of what types of moments does a Zac player have in the game, I'd like Zac more now once he's tuned because I feel like there's more things he can play around. He has more highlight moments. Not that you need a bunch of highlight moments to be a champion. What's interesting, though, is I talked to Static yesterday, who was the lead designer on the 3 tank reworks, and he was actually happiest with the Zac one. There are always really ambitious projects when they're doing these roster updates because you have to keep the feel of the character while somehow giving them this like healthy play style. I think Zac is super overtuned right now, will be kind of permabanned, but I like what he brings to the game more than I did the old one, right? Like the old one had these medium-powered entrances. He jumps in and then bounces around, and you move 2 feet over to the other side.
I think the biggest gain is very clearly the Q, the changes to the Q. Before it was extremely like very boring to use. It's just a range slow. So that there, it added a lot of utility though, and it added for those moments that you're talking about that have high highs. The other tanks though, we gotta touch on these because yes, Zac is the one you see all the time in bans. But people have also been memeing very hard about the Maokai ultimate.
Are you talking about the new AP support?
Yeah,
because that guy's not a tank.
He is not a tank.
He can be a tank if you build tanky.
No. You build
He doesn't
Leandries,
lane.
you build full AP, you put him in the bot lane.
Yeah, you can until you've seen him build full AP, and then you get hit with one of those saplings from the brush.
That was my first experience playing Maokai. I saw that build, I was like, yeah, this is me. Like I don't want to play against it, but I'll certainly play as it. And it's pretty comical when you get a few AP items. You have 2 or 3 saplings down in a bush. Someone walks by, you look 100-0 one of their carries.
I also
Is
think
he going to get played in pro though?
No.
As far as that, because it's a champion who's strong around brush, and
he's the weakest. He's the weakest of the 3. I do think he's very funny though, because the saplings are very iconic now. The ultimate is also very iconic
For all the wrong reasons. The ultimate is just way too slow. Like that's my thing with it.
I saw people get pretty good with it as far as
you can use it for flanks. You can use it when you're already on top of them. But like the ultimate seems so bad.
It's not what you expected at first. There's these giant roots coming after you. It's like you can outrun those.
It's
the joke zombies in the comedy zombie movies, not the 28 Days Later zombies.
Yeah, the supercharged ones. Yeah. As far as like the ones that we'll probably see in like pro play though, the Zac and Sejuani, the ones we've actually already seen, because LCK has already played, so we're cheating a little bit. They jumped right into it. I do think Zac is the strong one. Sejuani seems fine after the patch to the passive, not quite as overpowered anymore.
And I mean the top lane stuff is pretty interesting for Sejuani. Like you may be able to see her slot in pretty well. Like it feels kind of similar, almost like a Gragas-y type champion to me, where it's like you can kind of brawl a little bit, you have pretty good CC, you have good like team fighting, and your lane is like okay enough that you can wave clear and you can just be one of those tanks that can kind of just slot in as one of the interchangeable tanks in the top lane, you know, and I think it can be pretty strong with that. Like, Maokai maybe situationally, but if you're looking at support, like the biggest problem for it to me in pro play is the popularity of shielding supports. So it's like I had some games where it was hilariously fun, but then you play against like a Karma or something, and they just shield every sapling, like you can just proc them out, and you can't actually have a lot of success if you can't control the brushes.
Yeah, I think because of brush control and because of familiarity around the champion, you're going to play around Maokai a lot, and if he's going to see pro play, the power has to actually be taken a little bit out of brush control since people are so good at controlling brush in pro. Sejuani, though, I want to talk a little bit about the games we saw in LCK of Sejuani, specifically just the amount of innate tankiness you get from the Frost Armor passive is kind of insane. The LCK games, Sejuani was played top lane 3 games in a row by, I believe, MVP, and pretty much lost every laning phase by a non-trivial amount of CS, but in team fights was this unstoppable tank. It was funny listening to the casting. I think it was Crumbs kept saying, man, Sejuani is so tanky. Yeah, she is. She's got 100 bonus armor just from the passive for the first 2 seconds. And I think that actually gives her, along with the ability to stack up the stuns really easily, a place in pro as a top lane tank.
Yeah, and I mean, the actual damage that comes out from, like, you land the permafrost, you freeze them, and when you do snap that, it's a pretty significant amount of damage that comes out. So you're not just super tanky, but you're actually, like, adding a decent amount of CC plus damage for the rest of your team. The peeling can be pretty good. It can work well with diving. So, like, I do think that Sejuani could have a place, but you know, it seems one of those picks where there has to be a certain amount of bans and stuff that are already up there for you to play it. Because like, I don't think you want to play it in Fiora. I don't think you want to play it in Kennen. I don't think you want to play it in like any of that stuff.
And even beyond like lane specific stuff, taking into account both team compositions is more important after the rework. Because she's not just the generic AoE giant ultimate for, you know, engaging on poke comps or whatever. Kind of the opposite now, right? You have to rely more on the melee and brawling. But yeah, overall, I think pretty happy actually with the tank reworks.
Yeah, tank updates in isolation. The items, Gargoyle Stoneplate is an interesting one to me. The extra armor and MR you get during fights, and I think a lot of people at first didn't really understand how this item worked. They're just thinking, oh my goodness, I double my max health and it's gonna be crazy. Think of it differently. Think of it like damage reduction for the duration, because you don't get to keep the health that you bonus gained. It keeps the percentage of your health the same when the item wears off. So the best champions that it's on are theoretically something like Malphite, who dives in, does all of his burst, and then is sitting on cooldown for 4 seconds, and that's kind of when you become tanky.
And I do think it's like, I actually like the itemization changes quite a bit. Like, I just felt like building GA was too good on tanks, and like it didn't feel good for me to build as a tank. Like, it's just like
felt great for me. What are you talking about?
I always feel like
every game.
Like I hated it. Like I just always feel like it's like you have to build it, but not because it's a fun item, but because you have to build it because it's so good. And like I actually prefer the fact that like there's more variance in tank itemization.
Hold on though, how has it changed at all then? Because now if you're AD, you have to build it. It's exactly the same.
You have to build it on a different class of champion.
It's so good. The win rate's not even, it's a different class of champion because the stats are different that they're allocating to it. But the passive is the exact same amount of gold that you're spending. And now, you know, it's still on like divers like Kha'Zix, you know, AD marksman and stuff like that. I don't know. I still feel like it's in a very similar place. It's just different champions build it now because it has different base stats.
That's fair. I mean, to me, it was always like I didn't have as much of a problem with those champions doing it. It was more the fact that a tank can go in, like, you know, come back with thousands of HP from this item. Like, I've never had really as much of a problem with you burst down an AD carry and they pop back up with 800 health. Like, I feel like it never felt as frustrating to me. Not that it's not strong, but like it wasn't as annoying to play against as like, you know, you have the Nautilus with 4,000 HP come in, and then they go in and then they get shielded up after they come back from GA with 3,000 HP and stuff. And I just find the new items more interesting to build, and there's more different options that feel good. Like Stoneplate, I think is super interesting. Like you're talking about damage reduction. Like,
does Adaptive Helm ever feel good, by the way? Because I have yet to ever build it. So I just looked at it and I was like,
I build it. I think its efficiency works actually against Rumble and Cassiopeia. I think efficiently wise.
When you say you build it, have you actually ever built it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I built it yesterday.
So you,
What is it? It was in an ARAM, but I built it.
I've built it a few times. Like I don't know if it was
got built
troll.
in LCK
I built it
against
against Teemo, and like that actually felt like pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
It feels pretty good against Rumble and stuff. That's the one I like the least though, because it does feel like this is an item.
It's against like a couple champions.
Yeah, and it almost feels like it's designed to smash those couple champions. It's almost the same problem I have with Executioner's calling, where it's like, oh, you built that against Mundo? Oh, well, he's screwed now. Oh, you built that against like Nautilus? Well, he doesn't really care, right? So it feels like it's this item specifically that screws over some champions, which I don't really like, but I do really like Stoneplate. Like I was playing with it on Darius, which felt really fun because you would think, oh, okay, well, you don't really want to do that because he does a lot of damage. But in team fights, like when you're on 1 damage item, you pop that and you're just sitting there with essentially like half damage reduction to get your stacks.
Yeah.
And then you have your 5 stacks. The thing expires after a couple seconds. And you can go nuts in team fights, which is things like that are pretty cool.
The reason I like that one is because it gives you, time periods to work around.
Yeah.
Yes, you're sacrificing damage for a time of damage reduction, and then you just time your abilities around that.
Yeah, what's funny to me as well about this is we just talked a lot about the tank items that were changed, and yes, a little bit changed in playstyle, but I think there were other changes that have much bigger impacts in the patch. The Doran Shield changes and the insane buffs to Zeal, IE, and Essence Reaver, I think actually have a huge impact on both the meta and the way we're going to be seeing pro play turn out. I mean, how many Doran Shields do you see in pro? All of the Doran Shields pretty much, 2 to 3 times a game.
All day, every day.
And I think most people are on the same page that like it probably should not be good on 80 carries. Like I don't
all of
I thought I saw Sven tweet out, I refuse to ever build a Doran
He's like on a hunger strike.
You know what he's gonna build in week 1? Doran Shield.
Yeah, he's just tweeting that for the favorites, and he's actually gonna build it.
400 gold. Like the reasons why it's good, I know a lot of people already talked about this. The cost reduction by 50 gold to get an extra health potion is big, but then just also the fact that it helps you last hit, and it has a large amount of health regeneration. It just has too many things going for it from a tuning perspective.
My biggest thing with it, like I actually think so I like the idea that there is like a specific item that can help get you through the laning phases. Like, you can complain that it's a lot of sustain, but it also feels equally bad where it's like I pick a top laner and okay, now I'm playing against Rumble and I just have to give up everything because I'm just gonna like get slammed in the early levels by Flamespitter. Like that also feels bad. My biggest problem is actually the price point. I don't see why the item that gives you by far the most regen also needs to cost 400 so you can get 2 health potions on top of it. I think you make this item 450 and like a lot of the problems go away with it. Maybe I'm wrong, but like to me that was the biggest thing where it's like not only do I get an extra health potion over starting Doran's Blade, but I have so much more innate regen just from the item, so it's like doubling down on the same problem.
I think it's a big thing. And then what was funny is we talk about defensive builds on 80 carries. I saw an Ashe in LCK last night that had Ninja Tabi, a Doran Shield, a QSS, and a Bilgewater Cutlass as the only offensive items. And I was wondering, what champion is this? I think it was Prey. I think it was actually Prey in that game. So rather defensive builds. I think we're going to see a lot more of the crit itemization. I think 80 carries are actually insane right now. I think these buffs are too much.
What do you guys think about Death Dance Rush and stuff like that? Because you're talking about GA. Like I've seen like a lot of Draven stuff where it's like Death Dance into GA. I've even been seeing Jins go like Death Dance first and stuff like that.
I've seen a lot of Zaya's Death Dance.
Like Death Dance is so like. I just feel like the item is very frustrating to play against because the damage is diverted so much, especially in combination with shielders, that it's like this stuff is just the dot is getting absorbed by random shielders.
When we were in Brazil, that was the first thing that I was like, dang it, we can't play solo queue. I want to try to abuse,
We're gonna build Death Dance on as many champions
that's coming out, and I was like, sounds good on Kha'Zix.
Draven Death Dance, I actually think the Zeal item second is best. The Death Dance Static Shiv ones, I think, are the most dangerous Draven builds I've seen. I don't really know if Draven would be a pro pick just because he's unreliable and so snowballing in laning phase.
That's the thing, though.
That's what we're playing against.
The improvement to Death Dance was huge. Not only did they double the passive, but an extra damage on it, also 5 more damage. Like, it's definitely one of those win more items, but it feels like, especially with a champion like Draven, where if you get a kill, you're snowballing now, then it seems like that's not the biggest leap that you have to take.
Yeah, and I mean, I've even been seeing like a lot of the builds where people are just doubling down, even like tripling down on lifesteal in combination with this item, because if you're getting any attacks off, you're essentially like erasing the dot. Like I've been watching, I was watching Ray, right? He's playing a lot of Riven and stuff and going like Death Dance, Bloodthirster, Mercurial, and things like this, like triple lifesteal type items. And it's like the damage is getting diverted. He gets one hit off. He's lifestealing all that damage back up.
I was hoping we'd see more Alawi, actually.
We might see a little bit of a rise in those builds, and that's why I think Death Dance could also be a good Callista item. The champions that can get to a point where even though they're damage dealers, they're drain tanking you in a sense, because the Death Dance and stacking lifesteal builds can work really well in that sense. Talking about Ray in the top lane playing stuff like Riven does make me think a little bit more about Rift Herald as well, because that was one of the most obvious changes about the midseason. Instead of this objective that is forgotten about in most games, it's this incredibly visceral thing that slams into your turret and is almost a guaranteed turret. And I guess the question is kind of, how much will pro teams play around this? Because I think it is such a pressure gain when you get it and really dictates the way you have to play around the map.
Much more than the previous Rift Herald, for sure. I think everybody's in agreement of, the power increase of the new Rift Herald.
I actually kind of disagree.
Really?
So I think that the old one...
Almost everybody, not as
I think that the old one was super powerful. I think the biggest problem was how much harder it was to take. Like that, I feel like if you could solo the old one, there'd be all kinds of split pushers that wanted that like every game. Because for the 1v1, like that, the old Rift Herald was nuts. It's just that, to me, this new one is so much easier to take that
it is actually trivial to take right now. You can solo it with any jungler.
You can solo it with any top laner too. So. And it's the fact that it's not dealing a lot of damage to you, so it's like it's less threatening to start this up and try it, and then it's like, oh, they came, I guess we leave, and it's fine.
I can see what you're saying, right? If you look at the raw power of the buffs that used to happen, 20 minutes of 1v1 damage reduction or 1v3 damage reduction and extra damage that charges up over time, or one summon within a 4-minute window of a giant thing that runs down a lane. It's so much more compacted. The overall power, I'd actually say the old one is more powerful, but I think this one will have a larger footprint on the game.
Yeah, way bigger.
Because the damage isn't as deferred.
I'm definitely not sold that the old one was more powerful. Like, especially in coordinated play. I have, even in solo queue, I have literally gone from outer turret, taken inhibitor turret, because we got 3 kills.
I'd be super interested to see in a theoretical world when the old one was super easy to take, and then like the win rates of it, but that's a pointless argument to have. We're talking about the new one.
I like this new one, and the point is, it actually is, you can use it to snowball really, like, everyone's like, I know Freak was like, oh, well, you spend about as much time to take a turret, and then you probably get 1 turret.
The dance it does when you end the game while it's still alive, and the fact that all of us have seen that means that it actually has a large impact in the game.
That's actually a good point.
So I do think it's really good. Like, my only thing, like, actually, a lot of people feel like, when I listen to them talk about it, think it's very overpowered. I actually think it's in a pretty decent place because I do think that A, you have to use it pretty intelligently. B, I don't think that you can just like drop this for free against an organized team and just automatically get a turret. It's like you must get this, do something, then you can use it, right? It's like you get this, you dive, you get this out of position, and I think it's pretty cool.
And it expires. I like that you can't just hold on to it forever.
And it costs you your trinket, so the longer you hold on to it, the more
exactly.
it costs you.
There are drawbacks to using it that you also have to take into account.
Can't use that.
They can see you now, Jack. What are you doing?
It's very punishing when I lose my trinket for this empowered recall thing. That's almost guaranteed to get me first turret blood.
I'm so sad. I actually, one time I was standing on it and I was like about to pick up the buff, and I was like, oh shit, I got to use my warding trinket before I pick the thing up. So I pressed the ward right next to it just to like get it out, because I was like, I won't be able to use it. But what it did was immediately summon the Rift Herald.
Because you picked it up while you were.
Because I was standing on it already. I don't know if you press it your trinket during the channel while you're picking it up.
You can pick it up from
then it
far.
insta summons and they killed it immediately. And I was so sad. Anyways, that's a little tip. Now you don't have to make that fail yourself.
You can also interrupt the channel if none of you have experienced that.
I've seen that happen a couple times where it's pretty funny. The person just like walks up straight to a turret and they start doing their little channel, and the person just comes up, stuns them, and it's gone.
You just lose the buff that you put your time into. I like it. I feel like I wonder if it's going to have an inflection point of the kind of early game pushing strategies and whether those actually become stronger and can become the dominant strategy, because there's an element of that could happen.
Show me protect the Herald strategies. Shield him up. Don't let him get to the eyeball.
Can you shield him?
I know you can blood boil him.
Okay.
Because I played Nunu, but I don't. So you can cast stuff on him.
It's something that demands attention.
The thing is, you can cast blood boil on minions too. So
you should
probably can.
One of the things I'm actually, well, you used to be able to Karma Shield minions and stuff, right? But they've changed that, so I don't actually know, I haven't tried that. But one of the things that I'm really interested about is will this shift the way that the pro players play the game? Not even just in like, oh, there's gonna be more focus around it, because there is, but do you play like more lane swap stuff? Do you, move your bot lane top earlier, try to force situations where it's like, if you have a hard pushing bot, can you shove in bot lane, recall, immediately go top lane with your first buy and try to force this? Because like, it's not doing as much damage, and stuff like that could be really interesting. Like, I think a lot about, CLG when I think of interesting like pre-planned strategies and level 1s and things like that. And teams, if they can really get that going, like you could pick up some easy wins perhaps in the early stages of the season before people adapt to these strategies, if you can come up with them.
I like how it changes a little bit too, depending on what dragon spawns. Like the power on the bottom side of the map that you're trading, if you do focus top side, could depend.
Yes, I'm going to steal a this or that slide because I thought it was a good Infernal Drake or Rift Herald.
Spoiler! What?
I actually don't know when we're releasing the cadence of it.
You guys cannot answer. I can answer because I'm not on that show.
Yeah, all right. What's your Infernal?
Well, we had different answers actually. He could be the tiebreaker.
So I think it depends on team composition. But if we're just assuming like overall, I take Rift Herald because I prioritize early gold.
This means you're both dumb.
Because I think that like the early gold, like when I look at what have teams prioritized in pro play normally, it does feel like people are willing to
Makes you think you're getting a turret with this Rift Herald, bud.
The fact that it hits the turret for half of its HP with its first charge, that's what makes me think Kobe. But it's like, when I think about a lot of the top teams, they often do prioritize turrets, like a turret trade. If they can get a turret trade for a dragon, they'll try to do that. Yeah. So I kind of see this in a similar light. But I will say, like, to argue the other side, if I have, like if I'm running like a 1-threat comp, then yeah, I don't care about Infernal as much. But if you have like Fiora, Graves, your mid lane is Cassio, and you have Zyra support, and you have like Caitlyn, or whatever, it's like, yeah, I'm taking the Infernal. Like, great, you got 1,000 gold, but this is worth so much because we're all gonna build AD and AP.
Yeah. Our producer told us this or that goes out after this. So
you did spoil.
I did spoil it. Congratulations.
Well done.
Go watch that. We're going to say, last thing about the patch when we're talking about kind of likes and dislikes, I want to talk about support quests a little bit.
Oh no!
Because when I first heard about support quests, I got really excited. I thought this is such a cool idea.
Yeah, okay.
We're going to give supports these rewards within the game for things that we want to encourage them to do. I was like, oh man, okay, 14 wards, you give an assist to everyone, you clear these wards, and then you're gonna get this super powerful buff. And what it ended up being is when you get 650 gold with your support item, you get a little bit more powerful. And I feel like if you didn't read the patch notes and you don't play support, you don't know what support quests are. I think they have such a small impact on the actual game right now.
I do like the Spell Thief one.
That's what I was gonna say.
With the little speed boost, that one.
That was already the good support item though. It didn't change anything.
Yeah, that is the one that does feel the best, especially for some people who can build it and like kind of engage, is like something like Rakan, right? Like if you get a speed up and then you can zoom in there faster, things like that can be kind of cool. Or, maybe you can like close the gap like on Malzahar or something to get in for an ultimate. Like if you can hit someone with your Q, you zoom in there. Things like that are kind of cool. I think the other two are kind of underwhelming. Like, they essentially equate to like passive stats. Like I was actually really excited about the coin one until I realized that I'm never in a million years going to be able to get this to rank up by ultimate. If I could get this and have an ultimate at level 5 or something, I would be like all aboard.
Right, because it gives you a skill point. For those of you who didn't know what support quests are, the talisman in the section line, when you get to your, I think, 650 gold breakpoint, you get an extra skill point. It doesn't give you like a level 19, but it gives you access to spells early on in the game. And that used to be the item where you would buy it to be passive. And now it's more of the item you buy it if you want to be greedy, because there really isn't a support item that promotes passive play.
And my biggest problem with Talisman, actually, when I played with the item, it was already like the slowest to generate gold, I felt like before, so it took a long time to get to the thing. But now it's like, you pick up the coins and everything, and that feels cool. Like, you play the first game and you're pushing them in, and great, I'm just gonna run around, grab all my coins, and then you play the next game, and you're playing against like Caitlyn Zyra or something. Like I was playing like a Jana game into Caitlyn Zyra. They had like Zed and some other divers.
You should not buy it against that lane, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it's like, I'm never in a million years gonna be able to pick up the coins. So I'm pushed to my turret, the coin spawns on a range minion. I either just like sit there and I'm just like dying inside because I'm like super OCD about like always having my spell thieves on cooldown, always having my things on cooldown, and I can never pick it up. I'm just like staring at that shit, it's timing it out, and I'm just like, no. Because if you go up for it, you lose half your health to like pick up this 30 gold thing. So I felt super bad about buying that when I had to play defensively, and like that's my biggest complaint with the talisman, because if the spawns aren't closer to you, it's like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? It just makes you feel bad.
Yeah, and I don't think that one will show up much in pro play. It wasn't hugely prolific in pro play already. It was already mostly Spell Thieves and
Afro
Targon.
was one guy that started doing it a lot, though, in passive lanes, which I thought was really smart. Like, even on, like, Braum and stuff, where stepping forward and getting the Targons wasn't worth the damage you would take, he started going coin. I was like, that's really smart. But that adaptation has kind of gone, to your point, because it's like, it isn't the passive one anymore. You have to be bullying lane for it to really be good.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on midseason before we do power rankings?
No, let's get into it. Summer split, baby.
Yeah, so the way this works is we all made power rankings lists. We intentionally did not talk to each other to try and make these different because we didn't want
Jat wouldn't even give me his Excel sheet that had all of the rosters with the roster moves on it. He's like, no, I made this. I'm not giving it to you. And he gave me the generic one.
The official one. Mine was worse than it. Anyway, we then summed it up. We're going to go from 10th to 1st. The 10th place team.
Well,
by
this
averages.
is.
Oh, yeah, we have to define what power rankings are.
Well, yes, but also this is the merged power rankings. This is
Yes.
Yeah. Let's reveal our individual ones at the end,
And
or
let's be very clear
the
that
way.
these bad power rankings are not my power rankings.
But we have yours.
well, we're gonna get yours.
Mine are also bad, but they're not these bad power rankings.
It's important to define power rankings. These ones are in mind of who do we think will have the best regular season record at the end of split. So these aren't who is the strongest team in week 1. This is not who will win playoffs. This is who is the strongest team at the end of the regular split.
Basically by record.
Yeah. Number 10, we have with an average of 9.33 Echo Fox. I had them 9th. Kobe had them 10th. Isaac had them 9th. Kobe, we're going to start with you because you're the most extreme.
I just wasn't sold on the attempts for changes for these guys. Like so many people thought that there was going to be big roster moves coming through, or big cash being dropped somewhere.
Yeah.
And a lot of the other teams, actually looking at your spreadsheet that had all the moves, every single team made a change.
Echo Fox got a new coach, and they signed an entire Delta Fox roster that they're exclusively swimming
that's
with.
the other thing. I think that for me, it's a drawback that they've already declared that they're only scrimming versus their Delta team.
Yeah, that's what we have heard from a tweet from Jack, who
was angry that they canceled
because
their
they canceled
scrims on him. So yeah, exactly. We have to take that into account.
Yeah, but like, I mean, to me, it was a relatively quiet midseason as far as changes go. This was a team that conspicuously did not make a lot of changes to me because they needed changes. And I mean, you look at Keith, and not to single that guy out, but the amount of flack he got.
Let's single this guy out. Not to single him out.
But the amount of flack that he got and stuff, I expected Keith to be gone. Just being honest, I expected them to try something different, to move something.
Do you remember that he got top 10
challenger in Korea? There you go.
So this.
The team didn't seem to want to play around him. The community definitely didn't think he was good. Like, by the stats, he was not doing well. He's been around for a while. I expected a big change. It wasn't there, and that's why I just can't see the team.
And this is going to be a recurring thing when we talk about a lot of these teams, because I do feel like there's the potential for a lot of variance between 10th and even the teams that can squeak into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Teams didn't make a lot of moves because there weren't many moves to be made. They did pick up Mash, who's a challenger AD carry from last split and has LCS experience. Who would they get? They already have both of their impart slots being used by Froggen and Looper.
How hard did they try to get Turtle? Right? Like
that's actually a good point.
Big upgrade.
Turtle would have been a big upgrade.
How hard did you try? Maybe they gave it their best shot, and Turtle's like, nope, I'm going to the other team. I don't want to play on Echo Fox. And in that case, that's the way it is. But I feel like you better have tried to get Turtle if you're Echo Fox. Come on.
All right, call him up. Call Rick's Fox.
I'm gonna let him know.
Honestly, though, it's not even about the individual player. They did not seem to have a good team atmosphere, right?
Nope.
Keith he used to be such a happy dude. He was always memeing, even when he had poor games before. He was always working hard. He was grinding solo queue, and it just seemed like all the flack you're talking about from the community, and definitely the play that they had. It really took a toll on him. Plus, the team did not seem to have faith, as you said. He was on Ash duty for 100 games in a row or something. Pretty sure that's accurate.
About 100. Not 3,000.
Probably 10,000. It was really sad, kind of seeing that happen to a player. So even though I know that he has performed better in the past, I don't see them making changes as far as team atmosphere or helping him to get better.
I think this is going to be a big split for Froggen, too, because we can no longer give the Echo Fox excuse of, oh, they're going to be a summer split team. This is their 4th split, and they've been a team for 2 years. And they started last split well. So the fact that they fell off towards the end of the split
that was like
skeptical.
the last thing for me is you look last year and it's like the big bright spot was Acadian playing super aggressive junglers. When you listen to him talk, he hates the state of the jungle. He had made it very clear that he thinks junglers are very weak, can't really affect the game. I disagree.
When they were the strongest role in the game.
But it's like his playstyle, at least the way that I think of his playstyle, is the carry junglers, assassin junglers, like tank junglers coming in doesn't really suit him. And to me, that's another thing that's going to hit them even more, and that's why I put them so low.
We got 10 teams to cover, though. We have Echo Fox, 9.33. Next one, average vote of 9. Envy, I had them 10th. This one has a lot of variance. I had them 10th. Kobe had them 7th, and Isaac had them 8th.
Yep.
I guess I'll start.
Yeah.
Because
they
they
brought in Pyrian, right? They switched out.
Yeah, and nothing else.
Not a Pyrian fan.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I had a lot.
Oh, I know. I knew all about it.
Pyrian actually was an extremely high-rated solo queue player. Well, he stayed in the
He was
US.
like 1100 LP or something.
He was a Phoenix 1 sub the whole split. He's just never going to start instead of Ryu. It's tricky because Envy was far and away the worst record in the LCS last split, but they could never close games. And I don't think Ninja was necessarily always to blame for them being unable to close games. And I don't see them doing anything to fix those problems. As much as we just kind of talked down Echo Fox, I still have a little bit of faith in their structure, from even scrimming Delta Fox to having good practice facilities to theoretically being able to improve over time. And I don't see those same things with Envy. There's a lot of interchangeability between 6 and 10, so I just ended up having Envy last.
I mean, so for me, like while I agree that Ninja was certainly not at fault in every game, like we're not talking about them going from 10th to 1st.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm talking about them going from 10th to 8th, right? Like he was at fault in quite a few of those games. And if Pyrian could just like not get randomly picked off at 50 minutes, like as Ninja was very like commonly doing, like that was my biggest thing with him, is he would play lanes great, he could snowball if he was ahead, but late game it always seemed to be the scenario where it's like, oh God, why is Ninja there? Oh, what's happening? Oh, he's dead. And then they lost the game. So, I mean, you give them a couple more wins, they're moving up, and I just feel like Lyra has become such a strong jungler.
Yeah.
If they think this is a better fit for their team, and if he can work well
There's
with
no
Pyrian,
way Lyra gets 10th place again.
Oh,
First
God.
team
Now
all
he's
in
getting 10th.
LCS.
Now I want to change my rankings. You jinxed it.
Kobe, you had him 7th.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I pretty much concur with most of Azael's reasonings. I feel like they did make a big change, taking out Ninja. And like I said, I have so much faith in Lyra. I just think he's such an extremely good jungler.
He can carry some games.
I think he was good.
A lot of games.
I don't have faith in Seraph. Oh my goodness, the amount of NA solo queue trash talk leading to bad improvement just sits so badly with me. Yes, I understand that it's not the same practice environment as Korea versus NA, but I saw
he doesn't seem to have a good attitude.
Yeah, this is not going to translate very well to the podcast, but did you guys see that cartoon where Seraph was riding a bicycle, and he puts a spoke in his bicycle and falls over, and then he blames NA solo queue for falling off of his bike. That's honestly what it feels like a lot of times. So much is wrong with what they're doing, and he's saying he can't improve his shot calling playing solo queue. Everyone is experiencing the same environment, and you can't keep scapegoating this one part of your practice environment for the reason for your non-success.
And this is a little bit of a tangent, but I actually agree quite a bit. And it was like you saw Dardoch was actually went on kind of this spree of tweets, and it was talking about people kind of attacking NA players for saying, oh, NA solo queue isn't that good, oh, you can't play, blah, blah, blah. And Dardoch kind of went on this little tweet.
Be the solution.
Saying, well, and he was talking about you know what, you actually can play that much. He has 8 games or whatever he was saying, something like that. And it's you can play multiple accounts. You can find ways around it. You can just deal with the longer queue times. You still can put it in. It may not be the ideal situation, but I do think that you can still get a lot out of practicing in those environments, even just using it to really prepare as best you can for the scrims. I'm not saying that solo queue translates directly to LCS stage, but you become extremely proficient on a good pick then you take that to a scrim, then you take that to stage. It's a 3-step process to me. It's like, it's solo queue to scrims to LCS.
Yeah, and I really do think there's so much of League of Legends is staying sharp with the current meta,
Repetition.
right? And with the game, repetition, but like even experiencing situations in game so that you can react quicker the next time. Even if you already know the correct plan, you're like, oh, I would obviously, go for the red buff invade right now. But actually being in that situation and reacting 1 second quicker means a whole lot.
Yeah. NB 7th still?
Yeah.
All right. We're not.
I'm not changing any of
You're not gonna.
You thought your great argument to put them 10th is gonna.
Well, they were 10th before, so they probably will be again. Do you concur?
They were 3 and 15 last split. Number 8, cumulatively, we have Team Liquid. They were 8.33. as an
got
average.
it.
I had TL in 7th. Kobe had him 8th. You had him 10th.
I had him 10th.
Oh.
10th.
Explain yourself.
All right.
Yeah.
So I mean, to me, this is like, we talk about things that you were expecting to be changed, right? Piglet, they put him mid. They brought in double lift.
They went
like
back to the original roster.
like they're
This
like,
is their
we're,
split roster.
Steve was kind of on a
Exactly.
soapbox talking about like all the changes that they were
Different
making,
coach.
and Steve, I said.
Oh yeah, I know.
Owner,
So sorry.
right?
The same roster, different coach.
Yeah.
From spring to summer.
But talking about all the changes that they're making and all the effort that they're putting into this, and it's like really they got saved from relegation by double lift. Like double lift laned incredibly well. They still were not a good team with double lift. They still were not very good. And then you take this roster, you go back to the old roster that really sucked, and what? Golden Glue going to Korea for a couple weeks is supposed to make this a good team? I mean, are you kidding me? It's like it doesn't change. And I think that unless the coach really makes a big change, then I'll be happy to eat my words. But I just think that it's like this is the same team we saw failing. This is the same team we saw, not really seeming to get along, being tilted, like having all these issues, Golden Glue getting attacking, smashing lane every game. And it's like, I just don't think that a couple weeks in Korea changes anything.
I agree that a couple weeks in Korea doesn't change anything, but I don't think that's the argument to make for them being better this time around. This is definitely one of the organizations with huge support staff. As you said, they're changing the coach. They also have a vast array of subs. I mean, we talk about Delta Fox and Echo Fox saying, oh, they're only going to scrim that team. Team Liquid also have a full roster that they could scrim, plus they haven't said we're only scrimming our
TL's
team, right?
current sub-roster, Arc Second, Link, Youngbin, Conquan, Slushy, with Coach Kane.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and they still have made a lot of changes. We know St. Vicious was their head strategic coach last split. He's now with Team Dignitas. We know they brought in Kane, who I actually have heard really good things about from anyone who's worked with them. And that's kind of why I put them 7th. I also think there's a little bit more at work here. They have a former MVP in Rainover, who I think for a time was the smartest and best jungler in the NA LCS. And he fell off last split because I think he really didn't fit the meta very well.
Yeah.
There's a chance the meta actually fits him super well right now. And this is the last time I'm going to have any faith in Golden Glue.
Yeah.
Because there is a chance that he is actually able to perform because he just feels so committed to being good.
I think there was that chance last split as well, and the problem that he had, what everyone told me the problem was, oh yeah, even Jack was talking about like, oh yeah, he's actually really good in scrim. They prefer scrimming Team Liquid, like they get good practice out of him because Golden Glue is actually quite good in scrims, but he had a lot of trouble performing on stage. And again, I come back to kind of a similar thing with Keith, where Golden Glue was flamed super hard. Yeah. And that definitely gets you. No matter how much you want to say, I'm staying off social media or whatever, if so many people are just pelting you with these ideas and you're like, you think they're so wrong, but you haven't, like, you can't explain to them and no one's going to clear your name or whatever.
I think one of the toughest parts about that is it affects your teammates' opinion of you, I think, as well, right? Like, your teammates hear enough times and see enough replays of him doing something bad or messing something up, or they see the stats, he's always as far behind. Like, it shakes your teammates' confidence in you as well. And this guy, like, he's been around long enough that I feel like at a certain point, you're getting what you're seeing, right? Like, at a certain point, there's not usually some massive shift in play. Like, the one argument that I buy and that I could really get into is Rainover, the meta fitting him really well. And if Rainover can really go back to, like, MVP form, then they will probably jump up at least a few spots, because Rainover was incredible for a couple of years. But Golden Glue has never shown that kind of thing on the stage. And at this point, it's like, how many games on stage do you need before you can show that? Like, at a certain point, that's just the level that you're showing.
Like 3 years.
Yeah, so it's like,
He's had a while.
After 3 years, that's just how good you are.
Yeah, another one that's questionable for me on Team Liquid, even though I have them higher than other people, if Piglet is good, they could be higher.
He's a world champ, Jet.
If
Did you know?
Piglet is good.
Did you hear
But
that?
The other thing
right
is,
there.
last split, man, when Piglet and Matt were getting double killed in all of these lanes, and then he said, our problem is you just can't carry with the current set of champions. Like, dude, what is going on?
Have you tuned into Arrow games?
Yeah, exactly. And Arrow was having an MVP performance on the carries that Piglet didn't deem powerful. I do think the role is a lot stronger now. And if there was a motivation problem with Piglet, that was one of the reasons he was falling astray. The fact that you can carry now would be a way that he could do it. But I am kind of shocked that Piglet is even starting on this team.
I think a lot of people were shocked that
year.
the whole roster is the same.
You can kind of make that argument with
roster, right?
almost everyone on
Yeah.
this team, aside from Rainover, who I would keep almost regardless.
Yeah.
Or Lolo. I think Lolo is actually pretty solid. Like when you look at like in the field of top lane, like I actually think he's a pretty decent player.
All right, number 7. What we got?
7, we have Immortals with an average vote of 8th, but they're 7th. Something about fractions.
Dad did all the math himself, by the way.
Maybe this is wrong. Anyway, I have Immortals 8th. You have him 9th, and Isaac has him 6th.
I have 7th.
7th.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, 7th, 8th, 9th would
I thought,
average
no,
8th.
you had Envy 7th.
No.
Maybe I did the math wrong.
That's
All right,
7th or 8th.
you definitely did something there. Immortals, though, let's start this off.
I think it's safe to say we have it in
Let's talk about the changes. They got Smithy and traded him to CLG for Dardoch there. I think, so.
Where did you have them?
This is, I have them 9.
9th.
I have them 9th.
8th.
Yeah. I just felt like, where is the proactive, shot calling going to come from? Where is any sort of playmaking coming from here? Because Smithy hasn't been that type of jungler, and he even had like probably one of his down splits, last split with CLG, and then across the rest of this team. What are the strong voices that are really going to cause them to go forward and actually create their own leads?
I'll double up on that. I found the error in my ways. I was off by one number. Their average is 7.67, so still nothing actually changes about our power rankings.
Perfect.
And I think a lot of this will be on whether or not Immortals can grow as a team and if Dardoch was in a detriment to their growth. Because they did grow a lot. I thought Cody Sun and Olay were awesome later in the bottom lane for the latter half of the split. Poe Belter is still a player who has won an NA LCS split before, even if he's never been a carry.
Can't take it away from him.
Can't take it away.
He won with Smithy.
Flame won 5 years ago. I mean, but legitimately, if Smithy is that team play jungler and that can work for them, and the biggest struggle is going to be finding a carry for Immortals. But I think this is a team that is, what's their peak, right? Who's actually going to carry this team, which is essentially why I would have them in 8th.
Yeah, I mean, I have them at 7th. It's not like I have them monumentally high, but it was based on the growth of their bot lane. I actually think that their bot lane did clearly become like a top half bot lane. I thought that they were getting consistently a lot better. When you look at like Cody Sun and Olay start of the split versus the end of the split, like that was a huge amount of growth to me. So if they could continue that growth, like that could possibly be the area that they could carry from, especially because Olay like actually was a playmaking support. I think he was one of the best supports in North America last year. I think I had him 3rd in voting or something like that.
I put him 2nd.
Yeah, so like
I had him high up there. Yeah.
So that to me is kind of the thing. And while I look at their wins and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, Dardoch carried a lot of those games. Like he hard carried some games, but then I look at a lot of their losses. I was like, ooh,
Dardoch was the reason they lost a lot of
also
those
kind of why they lost a lot of those games. And my hope is for Smithy, that he can play some of these tank jugglers, that he can be like a stable, kind of force for their team with some of these yet really young guys like Cody Sun, and that they can develop around them and be, a relatively solid team.
Yeah.
Yeah, their coach also Song, so they made a coaching change as well. That can always have some pretty big implications. Ready to move on? Next team?
Yeah.
Because we're moving into playoffs as far as who would be projected. Dignitas, Team Dignitas, 6th for all of us.
Dignitas, Team Dignitas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
are Team
Wow.
Dignitas, not Dignitas.
So we all landed on 6 then, huh?
Yeah, we actually had a little bit of the same for 6, 5, 4, 3, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah, these changes are mostly around the subs and the coaching, right? Because they actually said X-Special is not going to start at least at the beginning of the split,
Yeah,
right?
I heard it was going to be big. And
Big
to be
is in
fair,
there.
They were 6th last split as well.
Yeah, and the reasons that they gave for Big as well as Shrimp as also being added as a sub were 100% communication. It was so much about communication with this team. And I feel like that right there gave me at least a little bit of confidence because they identified something that was very clearly one of their problems, and they head-on wanted to attack it. They also brought on Saint, I said earlier, to help out with coaching.
And they did seem like they were a stronger team in the second half. You know, like they made some changes. They started to. It felt like some things were coming together, and I do have some faith in them. Like someday, while he was not dominating like you maybe expected him to from the first like week or two, where everyone was super high on him, myself included, he still had like incredible laning stats. He's still very strong. Like they have some very strong pieces, and it still kind of feels like to me that they should be a playoff team just based off talent alone almost. Yeah. And that's why I find it hard to see a world in which they're like not in playoffs, but who knows?
You have them at right on the edge.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we should reiterate with these rankings is there was a lot of parity in the LCS last split where it did feel like in a lot of games anyone could beat anyone. I think we're going to have a similar rollout to this split. I think someday has an element of settling in to North America. At first with Team Dignitas, it felt like he had to carry every single game. And the team actually lost when they played directly around him, I'd say more often than not. I thought they found most of their success when he was just dominant tank play and Keen and the rest of the team were kind of having the carry pants. The big question for me is still going to be the bottom lane with Laud and Big or Laud and Nick Special. I don't have faith in that side of the map kind of whatsoever, but that still kind of lands them in 6 to me because they have so much strength in the top lane.
Yeah, I mean, Laud, I remember him coming into Spring Split was like he felt like he had all the pieces around him.
He was the one that needed to perform.
Well, and like he was saying, he had no more excuses, right? That was his time to perform and stuff, and he really did not become that dominant AD carry that he was obviously like helping you grow into, and they have stabilized their coaching and stuff. But I do have to feel like for him, this is maybe the last split. I think that people kind of look at it optimistically, like, oh, maybe there's still a lot of room to grow because. Once you're in the league for long enough and you've performed at the same level for long enough, that's just probably where you're going to be.
Yeah.
Kobe,
we don't see that much variation actually after a couple of years. People don't suddenly have a kind of big breakthrough. But
has that happened with any player who just suddenly?
As I was saying it, I was trying to draw out my words, so I had time to think of have we seen a really big?
But he still had big performances and like up and downs. But like I feel like this most recent year was who he's best.
I think Smoothie did that. I think Smoothie was a really average player for a while, and then he was best support in the split.
That's fair.
Smoothie's
big.
It can happen.
That's a pretty good
definitely
example.
Can happen.
It's pretty rare.
It just usually does not, and people do not expect it. But I think we're good for number 5.
Yep.
Yeah.
FlyQuest. All of us put FlyQuest 5th. Here I thought that I was going to put FlyQuest lower because everyone always said
Jack absolutely hated them all split last split, and they ended up 4th.
So why are they 5th now, Jet?
So even during their 3rd, 4th place match, when they were up 2-1, I was just like, man.
Can't wait for them to lose.
I still don't think they're good. I still don't think they should be the 3rd place team. Sure enough, they weren't. They were 4th, and they had the reverse sweep against COG, which put them ahead of them in the playoffs. I think COG upgraded. We'll get to them in a little bit. I think Wild Turtle is an upgrade. And talking about all of the problems from the teams we've just talked about that are below them, I feel like FlyQuest just has less of those and they have a higher upside. I do think they mentioned something about like a 6-man roster with Altec and Wild Turtle. I think if they do go with Wild Turtle, that's an environment where he can really thrive. I think if you look throughout history, when Wild Turtle's had his best splits, it's when he is with a mid laner who creates a lot of pressure and dies a lot because he's going in and creating fights. And High can do that. So I think Wild Turtle will thrive in that environment in this world. And I think the fact that they consistently kind of proved themselves last split means they can do it again.
Yeah, I was actually super excited to hear the Wild Turtle acquisition for FlyQuest because I was feeling pretty bad about the TSM 280 carry thing with Double F. I felt like Turtle was going to get shafted there and get very little playtime. But as you said, not only mid laners that are super aggressive, but it had been High and Moon basically like 2-manning the early game and just going super ham, bunch of skirmishes, going super hard on people. Turtle as well could fit into the playstyle of this whole team. This could be like our turbocharged team, like super aggressive, early game team that also can practice, these, surprise picks or whatever to come through. And I'm actually pretty excited about this iteration of FlyQuest. Plus, Turtle with High, I mean, they have history together. Like, he really trusts High as a shot caller. And I think that Turtle will thrive in an environment where they have that strong in-game leadership.
Yeah, that was more what made me think that they would succeed again, rather than like mid lane pressure. Because I mean, Bjergsen brings mid lane pressure, right? Like that is he doesn't play as recklessly as high, but he's a force in mid lane. We know how good he is. But for me, one of the biggest things is like it feels like this is a team that would be more willing to like accommodate Turtle, his play style, and like incorporate him more into the team. Whereas on TSM, it always kind of felt like,
I mean, this is a team that was like, go ahead, play Mordekaiser bottom lane, play Shaco jungle.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
They're
Like,
accommodating.
whereas TSM, it felt like it was kind of like 4 guys in Turtle, and like he's kind of like put on some stuff, and he's not really going to get that much to the farm. You know, it's Bjergsen and Hans are the stars, and they're going to do their thing. And like this is a team that may work better with him. And also, you know, like Hai is famous for being kind of like the micromanaging player and really like, you know, controlling the pieces on the board kind of thing, like working well with his team. And they like to play super aggressively, which already fits Turtle's style. So like, I see them as a solid team, and I put them 5th, but like I was debating even higher, right? Like I was thinking like anywhere from like 3rd to 5th. I could see that.
That's like,
It's just like, this is interesting, but stop what you're saying right now.
We have been feeding them compliments. They finished 4th last split. Why would we have them 5th this split? What's bad about this team then? Like, what's going to hold them down?
Because I think that CLG and P1 will like have had more growth. That's my thing. I think P1 improved a lot over the season, and they were consistently quite a bit better than TSM, everyone but TSM and C9. And I think that CLG is like pretty reinvigorated, but we can get into those as we get to those teams.
And that was actually one of the topics where I kind of wanted to jump in before, and you were talking about the parity and how close everything was. I think that it actually got, you know, a bit wider spread here with the top halves of the teams making some good changes. Like a lot of them made some pretty good, you know, proactive changes. Whereas for our discussion of, you know, a lot of the bottom teams, not many, you know, big changes that people were excited about. But yeah. Well,
Number 4?
Phoenix won. They finished 3rd last
is it are we all the same for all of them?
we have a little bit of
there's
the top.
There's a twist at the end.
Twist. Ooh.
Surprise ending.
Phoenix won is 4th, even though they finished 3rd last split. A team that actually went into the playoffs with that 7-man roster, right? They went through 3 supports last year. Sounds like Shady's going to be the guy. Sounds like Honori's going to be the jungler. All is settled in Phoenix One land.
Phoenix One has 2 jungler subs.
Yeah.
They added Mike Young, and Meteos is still there, though I doubt Meteos is ever going to.
Who is Mike Young?
I saw him play with Bjergsen last night in solo queue, and he wasn't doing very well.
Oh, he sucks.
So I didn't have
Solo
the
queue
best
test.
first impression, but I only watched like a 1/3 of the game that he was playing with Bjergsen.
Yeah, we're not here to talk about Mike Young. We're here to talk about Phoenix One. Returning MVP, Arrow. Positive things for them is the fact that they did kind of jump into potentially the elite class last split, but every time they had a chance to actually take down the elite class, they lost.
That's the big thing to me that like made it hard for me to put them at the very top. Like it just felt like they were not clutch, right? Like they're good team. They're better than the teams below them, but they are worse than the teams above them. And like, you know, talking about CLG, like the only reason I put them below CLG is simply because I feel like that is more of like a clutch team, a playmaking team that can make things happen against teams that are perhaps better than them. For P1, one of the most exciting players for me is actually Zig, because I think this guy has been steadily improving and getting quite good. I was pretty impressed by him last year. And I mean, if your bot lane is playing really, really well, if you have MVP caliber performances there, if Rio can really step up, and the stability of the team plus an improving top lane, then this team does have some room to grow and maybe could surge. But I think that they're like certainly like a top area team, just maybe they can't actually break in.
One of the biggest things for me is that they were making so many you know, roster swaps.
Just like ear flicky little roster swaps, little tweaks back and forth. You never really.
You could tell the players were uncomfortable a little bit, and if they, you know, they've settled on it, and you know the team atmosphere also gets better, then you know, I definitely see, you know, positive things.
I mean,
for them
Fly,
this
Ryu, and Arrow run that show for the most part. Then they kind of swapped everyone around. I think Honori's performance is going to be a big question mark, right?
Sure.
He theoretically is good on the carry junglers. Or if Meteos, you know, decides to try and play League of Legends, then I feel like he could jump in. But
yeah, number 3.
It's hard to overhype that team, because number 3, the team that we're most likely overhyping, COG.
Again, by the way,
they signed Dardoch.
Last split, we overhyped them as well.
They got reverse swept in the playoffs. It's in the past. 3rd place. I actually feel like with the right type of performance, COG could win the split.
So do I.
Go ahead, I'm third.
And what about the cryogenics little boot camp that they've been doing? They keep tweeting out all these. They went to some sports facility to train.
They did. I watched their. I wish I remember the name of the sports facility, but I watched their boot camp tour. They just walked through as a bunch of people playing basketball and lifting weights, and they're getting cryo freezing. It's like, sure, that's good for athletes, but is this really helping you with your League of Legends game? I mean, I think a little bit.
To me, the only thing is, okay, you're bringing in someone who's like very kind of an outsider. Dardoch has a really bad reputation. You know, oh yeah, signed 3 years from Immortals. Yeah, we're really committed.
That's why they froze
Get
him.
him out, right? Like, you know, they're just like, this guy's just been throwing people, like, thrown from
He was
team
flaming
to team.
too much. Cryo freezing.
Cryo freeze. But it's kind of like, I feel like something like this can be good because it incorporates someone into the team. Like, it's like kind of just a team bonding thing. That's at least how I see it. You're doing all this stuff together. You can like build up a bit of a friendship and hopefully like have like a more comfortable atmosphere going into scrims and going into the season. And if he is fully incorporated into the team and buys into the team and like can actually kind of like, for lack of a word, be reformed, then I think they will do very well.
Yeah, and one of the things that was really big as well, every time Dardoch switches teams, there's a reason that he keeps switching teams, right? And teams are
toxic.
Well, no. Well, also, so you have to have that.
Part of the reason, but not the entire reason.
Let me explain the entire equation to you, Azael. First part is
part
that
toxic.
The team he's on has to want to get rid of him, right? So that maybe we can attribute that to your toxic variable there. The other part of the equation
Someone wants him.
is that someone has to want to pick him up.
He's a great
and
player.
And a lot of teams really do, and you know, rightfully so, value super good mechanics. He's actually a very strong jungler. He is a playmaker. For me, I feel like CLG is the most equipped as far as the structure they have for the team.
Right.
Zix has been a coach. He was an analyst with the coach, and then he was a coach for the team for a very long time.
I feel like he's been with them for over 3 years.
Probably like the longest standing staff member for most organizations. Plus, that's out of game. Then in game, they also have Aframu, who is such a strong voice in game and demands so much respect.
Yeah.
So I feel like that set up, like this is kind of the perfect setup for it to take off.
I think COG's story is just so so fascinating, this split, because we have to keep in mind that they just broke up the longest standing roster in the NA LCS. They had that starting front with Nick Smithy for so long, and last split was such a letdown for them that I thought there's a chance that the team just explodes, because the whole spring split, if we think about it, they talked about scaling and learning the meta and how their teamwork is so good, and it almost felt like they were the Cleveland Cavaliers type team who's so experienced they're going to hit the playoffs and be good and just hit the ground running. Then they lost in the first round by getting reverse swept. So at that point, you have to kind of reinvent yourself, right? So adding Dardoch is a very risky move, and I think so much of it hinges A, on Dardoch's maturity level, but B, on Aframu's ability to demand authority from Dardoch. And that hinges on his play. Because last split, as much leadership or cool under pressure that Aframu had, he played bad and he fed in a lot of games. And if he's doing that, I think Dardoch loses respect for him. But if Aframu returns to nearly MVP form, that team is golden.
And everyone's kind of taking swings at Dardoch and kind of talking down to him a bit because he keeps on changing teams. But I also think it is important not only to demand respect from him, but also give him respect.
Yeah,
because
it goes both ways.
Dardoch has a lot of very good ideas. Like I say, he's not only is he a very good individual player, I think he's very intelligent about the game as well.
He's really smart.
And yes, he does get frustrated sometimes, but I kind of want to put my faith in him as well. Go to bat for Dardoch.
Incredibly smart player, incredibly talented player. And with that comes a huge amount of confidence, which bleeds into arrogance a lot of the time, which I think gives him a lot of problems.
To me, that's just the last thing. This is the career-defining split, I feel like, for Dardoch. I feel
it's funny because I heard people saying last time when he changed teams to Immortals, they were like, okay, this is it. He's gonna.
To me, like this is it. Like, and like, I'm sure people will say that. They're gonna say that every time. I didn't feel the same way about Immortals. I feel like you slot into a team that has multiple championships, has very experienced support staff, is very like well-rounded as a unit and like very cohesive as a team.
Yeah.
And if you cannot succeed here, like if he gets bounced out of CLG after a split, this is a guy who's probably just going to bounce around from team to team for whoever needs him. He's not going to be that big superstar, but he could be, and this is, I think, is his best chance.
Hit me with the twist.
The best team he has ever been on. Number 2 is C9. The twist, though, I guess you would call it a twist. I put C9 1. You guys both put them 2.
Trying to make up for all those years of memeing them and shit talking Cloud9, huh, chat?
So listen to this. I made one video about C9 2.5 years ago.
But what about the tweets?
What about the tweets, though?
Yeah,
the tweets. Yeah, the
tweets about solo queue.
Yeah.
He forgot about
like
those
I have
ones.
probably
Selective
complimented C9 more than any other caster.
Chat, lay it on us. Why is C9 going to be #1?
Based on the power rankings, we're saying who is going to be the best team at the end of the regular season. We saw SKT lose. We saw SKT lose 2 out of Samsung last night. I just think there's going to be some integration with Doublelift coming back from MSI, learning the patch, getting the shot calling back with TSM. It's going to make him drop more games early in the season. And I think C9 has a much higher chance to hit the ground running and potentially will be hungrier because of the Game 5 loss to TSM in the finals, that they will just shoot out of the gate.
You're going to be hungrier than TSM that just got flamed for 2 weeks straight while in MSI by the entire region? I think TSM...
Not just our region.
I think... Well, yeah, exactly.
We're
Not
talking
even just
about
our
the
region.
2 best teams.
They are
in
starving.
The
They are super hungry, dude.
Yeah.
Jensen's hungry.
I agree. I mean, like, if there is a reason that C9 has a better record than TSM at the end of the split, I think it's probably, TSM having problems with like shot calling or whatever at the start. But I am on the TSM first place train. I do think that C9 is an exceptional team, and they're a team. I mean, they came within an inch of being the ones to go to MSI, right? Zonia's away as the promo was talking about, and it's like
That's a nice promo.
Still too soon.
Yeah, but like so they certainly can challenge. I think TSM, but it's so hard to bet against TSM when I felt like they made a significant downgrade, from Doublelift to Wild Turtle, and they still ended up first, even with a bad start, even with being a couple games behind C9 last split. C9 started faster. TSM had a worse roster than they do now, and they still get first. It's like it almost feels like they're just going to be too good, and by the end of the season, I can't see C9 surpassing.
Yeah, and all the worries about shot calling that I hear from people. People are like, oh yeah, well, Hanser got used to a shot calling and Bjergsen shot calling, so that's 2, so you can't have 3, that's too many.
Yeah, I mean, we may as well just merge the C9 TSM conversations now, because we know TSM is #1.
Yep.
If we're all in the power rankings, C9 is #2.
Yeah.
I'm down.
To me, that's kind of ridiculous, because almost all members of TSM have talked about the shot calling problems and how there's a lack of it. So if anyone is like, oh, adding doubles is going to be too many voices, too much shot calling, I think that goes against everything that all of the players and the coaching staff have all talked about, them wanting to be more decisive and wanting to have, more clear decisions within the game. Doublelift is definitely a decisive person. Where it could miss is if, those are the wrong decisions.
Yeah, I think that is an overall win for TSM, and I do think the Doublelift on TSM is definitely an upgrade. What's interesting is this is Bjergsen's opportunity to have his best split ever, so to speak, if he has to do less shot calling in game and can style on more people and capitalize on opportunities made by others.
And one of the reasons that I also agree that shot calling is not an issue, it's not like this is like, some random person coming in and being like, guess what, guys, you gotta listen to me. This is Doublelift, who I think has already earned the respect of all those players. They know him as such a good player, and it's like, even if Hanser, had to shot call less or whatever, you'd feel like they would be okay, that there would be the mutual respect there, that whoever is in the best position to make the calls could make the calls and the team would listen. Like, that's what I'm expecting. But C9 with the top lane situation, in finals it looked pretty cool with Impact and Ray. Like, that's actually, all right, if they're going to play different types of champions and specialize there, maybe that actually works really well, and maybe that could give them the advantage, because I think that is the situation in which subs can work really well. If you can have them practicing more champions than Hanser could possibly practice, if it's like an advantage, you know what I mean? Like if that's your thing, if Ray is just so godlike at 10 different carry champions and Impact is so godlike at these 10 other champions and they can always have the right pick, then maybe that works. But the other side of that coin is that you split time in practice and you have to relearn things.
I think what is important here is that, to me, the top 2 are clearly a cut above the rest of the league.
Unless the COG formula just magically works.
Unless, because we're talking about, a little bit different here. You may have TSM, may have Cloud9 as far as finishing regular season game numbers, but I think that both those teams are clearly
these are our
top 2, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a chance during the regular season. I know that TSM needs to really want to find a way to stop losing all their stuff internationally, and they're historical solve for that has been to try and practice more in the NA LCS rather than trying to win every game, which would be another reason why I'd put C9 above them, because I feel like if they experiment too much, they're going to drop a lot of games towards the North American LCS.
Last year they won a lot of games.
Yeah, and then they
were
lost a lot of
practicing.
games at Worlds, so they didn't do it right. That's it, I think, for Power Rankings. So we're going to move on to Twitter questions. First one up is from a former TSM member, Jarge.
Oh no!
We could never get his pronunciation right
goodness.
on broadcast. Jarge, Jarge. Anyway, the question is, how do you manage the education and storytelling aspects in color casting, and do you find yourself conflicted at all trying to balance the two?
I think most definitely.
Yeah, I find I find myself very conflicted sometimes, because sometimes I think that there's like some tiny little thing in the game that happened, and I think it's so cool, but I have to realize that probably most people don't care at all about it. Like if I go over in depth on it, right? It's like, oh, I want to point out an item difference or something and why it's so important. You can maybe point it out, but sometimes it's not worth the cost to like everything else that you're glossing over to like deep dive on this thing for a couple minutes in the cast. Like it doesn't always make sense. And that for me is the really hard part, is finding the proper balance in like how deep do you go on an individual thing that interests you, but maybe is not relevant to most of the viewers.
Yeah, and it even goes a step further for me as well, because we have been casting for so long, and we have explained concepts so many times that to us, sometimes something like that will pop up, and I'll see an interaction, and I'll just be like, oh well, I've talked about that 5 times, so I don't want to repeat myself and say that again. And then you see, someone else explains it in a different game like a week later, and everyone's like, oh my God, that's so genius, and you're like, wait a second, like. Okay, well, I guess, people don't watch every single game that you cast, so they don't like have this log of, oh, he's repeating himself again,
exactly,
talking about those Krugs again.
Yeah, the way I manage it, to kind of get to the question, is we have had thousands of games of professional League of Legends, but when you're casting a game, let's say you're casting the NA LCS finals, this version of TSM versus C9 only happens once. So if there is a very compelling story, I'm going to prioritize that over most things. But when I'm kind of lacking on story, or if I don't see a super strong story, we've already touched on it, that's when I try and get more into the education of it, and then you're okay repeating yourself, because there are still things that constantly change about the game. Anyway,
it's always going to be best judgment, right?
Exactly. It's a balance, and it's literally, you can't get it right for every listener, because someone has watched the last 10 games that I cast, so to them, I'm just a monkey repeating myself. And then to the other guy who's tuning in, this is the first one they've seen in a while.
Yeah, and it's a great insight.
And just preference, right? Like some people want you to like pop off and be super excited, and that's what they love. And some people want you to explain how to get better at the game for an hour straight, right? Like you cannot please both those people equally. So at the end of the day, best judgment.
Yeah, next Twitter question, CS or @Shepherd1000 says, most memorable professional play you did as a player. Also glad to see you finally putting this on video in brackets.
That is easy for me. WCG 2010.
Amumu. Look it up.
5-man Amumu Ultimate. We win the entire championship. That's actually the happiest that I've been in my entire life, was after we won. I'm like, check him.
Well, not married, hasn't had a kid. Safe to say this at the moment.
Make sure no one else is
gonna
watching
get offended
this.
right now.
Your mom, your dad, tell them not to tune in this week.
I just remember it was so surreal, like walking up, there was like this rooftop after party or whatever, like walking up with my team, and like Mark Mellow's coming up to like congratulate me, and everyone's like, yeah, you guys won. And I'm just like, I'm the best in the world. Whoa! And I was just like, yes, this is the best thing ever.
I need to think about this, man.
Yeah.
You going?
I mean,
you're gonna do WoW probably.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, for me, it's WoW because I was never a professional player in League, so I don't know how interesting.
But you won a bunch of tournaments.
Yeah.
Wow.
I won a lot of tournaments and stuff, but I mean, for me, the most memorable was just the winning moment for the first tournament I ever played in. Because leading up to that, it's like essentially we thought we had a sponsor, and they turned out to be fraudulent. They didn't have the money to like send us this event, and my team, like our parents decided that they were going to send us anyway, and like didn't have like a lot of extra money or anything like that. So this was like, a big deal for them, right?
It's a heartwarming story.
It is, and I mean, it meant a lot to me, right? And it's like, and we get sent, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go have fun, and then that's going to be the end of esports for me, right? Like I'm going to lose, and then that's the end of it. And we go, and we actually won, right? And
did you get money to pay them back?
Yeah, I was, and because I actually made some money from it, I was able to help them out with like loans and things later. So like, but the win there, and I got sponsored from to EG from it and everything. That was like, that changed my life, right? Like that to me is, had I not won that tournament, I'm not sitting here today. I never got sponsored. Like that's how I see it in my head. So even though like I won a world championship and stuff, the first thing to me is always gonna mean the most by far.
Yeah.
All that, Jet. You better be good.
You have a world championship highlight Mumu play. You have your career starting. I mean, the question is professional play, but I almost feel like just like moment of professional feeling of the gaming career has to be the IPL 3 win I had in League of Legends, which was the first LAN event I had been to, and it was at the time a scene that had been really dominated by CLG and TSM, and here we were, like Team Dignitas used to be rock solid, like just kind of show up with grungy clothes and win.
You still had Locust on the team, right?
We had Locust on the team, and Voyboy couldn't go because he was too young to compete in that state. So we brought in a sub-low Cicero, moved Scarra top lane, and still won, right? It was this like so validating thing that we were able to win. Even though I played Guild Wars and won a bunch of online tournaments, that wasn't the same. It felt like League of Legends was finally real. I didn't have an impressive play that entire tournament. I played Trundle. That dude doesn't have highlight moments. I pillared a lot, and we won with objective control. But it was still, just that moment was super cool.
Dang. Shout out to Lo Cicero, though. That's an old name.
Yeah.
I like that guy.
He could play 3 champions, and we were terrified that people would find out and ban them away. But they never did.
Woo, win the whole tournament. Play 3 champions.
I also love how you, Scar, and Voyboy were like back then, and you're all still big in the scene now.
And I'm a cutie pie.
Yeah, there you go.
We're all on the same team. It was pretty cool. Last question.
That's a good team. Good League of Legends.
Yeah.
Where's Locust? U of T invert at the 6 or invert lol. Last question of the episode. Did you guys catch any of the collegiate matches, and what did you think? And what do you think of the scene?
I did watch some of it. Like I just as a scene, I thought the games were fun. I like that there's different picks and stuff. But my biggest thing is I always felt like, so one of the questions I got asked a lot was, oh, how do you become a pro gamer? What do you do and stuff? And I always felt like I could never recommend someone trying to do this because I never felt like there was a legitimate path to like career success and stuff. And to me, this is so cool because, you know, I didn't go to university because I went into pro gaming. And for me, like that was always like this fear that this is not going to work for me. You know, I'm going to be like 30 and going back to school and like, you know, be a failure and blah, blah, blah. And this is cool because the collegiate scene means you can go, you can get an education, you can get like competitive
They'll
gaming
even give you
experience.
sponsorship, right?
Yeah.
They'll give you
scholarships and stuff. Like that's such a cool path to see, does this life work for you? Do you enjoy it? Are you good enough to make it to the next level? Like this offers all that and still the safety of getting a college education. And that's something that like I never had and something that I wish I had had. So I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I actually love that point so much because something that kind of helps people tip the balance with their families when going for something as risky as esports or getting into being a pro player is being able to say, look, we actually did win that tournament. Look at, I won real money.
Look at this novelty check.
Yeah, exactly. I literally have the fucking giant check, and they're like, wow, you made some money, I guess.
Check.
You know, yeah,
You can't
exactly.
cash them, actually. They're free.
But if you can, this is even better than that, because all your parents are like, oh no, you need to go to school, you need to get, education, your future, think about this, job security, all that stuff. You can say, look, they're actually even giving me a scholarship. There's tangible things here.
I agree. Beyond that, the thing I liked about the collegiate scene is how similar it felt to college sports to me. I look at college football teams. Some of them run the option and these weird defensive schemes that would never work in pro play. And we got to see picks that we don't see in pro play and styles we don't get to see pro play, even in the highest level of collegiate esports in this tournament, because you have such large skill disparities between some of the top players and some of the other players they're playing against. So it was a unique type of League of Legends you don't get to see played in the competitive space, because the pros, they have big champion pools and they generally kind of all try and mimic the same style, whereas collegiate was not about that at all. And I thought that translated so well between college sports and college League of Legends.
Yeah, I think the specializations of people with champions is really cool. And that is something that we kind of lose in pro play because they want to be, generalists and play all the OP champions. So they all kind of just look at like specialists of those champions. But definitely to your point, it makes the games really interesting and changes the stories a lot, right? Because it has to do with that kind of mastery of those specific champions.
And in pro play, there's very few scenarios where you can just style on people like that with those specific picks.
Unless you're Faker,
yeah, but I mean, like in ULOL,
or Perks.
You could like, in some of even the top 8 stuff, like you could have a challenger guy versus a D5 guy, right? And like that is miles apart as far as like.
And you can still have the guy on the D5 win the game because the rest of his team could be
Yeah,
better.
well, and it's a team game, but I just think it's like it's cool to have that that ability and that opportunity to just like hard carry because you're so good individually, right? It's like LeBron before he goes to the NBA. Like you can play differently because he can 1v5. You can
or LeBron while you're playing in the NBA.
Yeah, just LeBron, period.
Awesome. So thank you guys very much for the Twitter questions. Remember, hashtag the Dive Law if you have any other Twitter questions. That brings us to the end of the show. If you watch us on YouTube, good for you. Thank you very much. This is our first episode.
Great job.
If you're still faithful to the podcast, continue to find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Pocket Cast, Stitcher. Maybe one day
That was a good list.
we will be on Spotify, but they select their own.
They don't like
podcasts.
us.
Yeah, we got to get bigger. We got to blow up first.
Yeah, we'll see.
Sell out.
Also, remember you can catch us on the NA LCS June 2nd this Friday. We'll see you guys there.